All right. Hey, my friends, and welcome to this episode where we're going to talk about escaping the fear prison. So, um, what I didn't know for a long time was that fear is a literal prison. Not physically necessarily, but mentally and emotionally, which creates a physical prison in your life indirectly. And so, um, when I was lost in the loop of OCD and anxiety and dealing with, again, not sleeping well and panic attacks and feeling anxious in social settings and all of this stuff, and I was doing my best to quote unquote help myself and cope and manage and so on and so forth. The reality was is that I was in a prison. And I think the more honestly I admit that to myself, my hope would be that the transference would be that you would be able to admit that to yourself as well. Because for a long time, I convinced myself that I was getting better, right? And I would tell myself, well, like this is not as bad as it was, so I must be getting better. And with the fear prison, just like a regular prison, if you will, there's not really a like, hey, I'm kind of free or I'm kind of, in jail. It's like there is or isn't, you know? Like we have to kind of have there can be a transition, where you're again escaping and there's an escape process and so on and so forth. And I want to talk about that here. But our end game has to be complete liberation, right? You would never, if you were in jail, you would never really sign up for something that is like, oh, hey, you have to come back Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays, but you get this many days out, right? You want complete liberation. One of the reasons I think I'm so drawn to movies like The Count of Monte Cristo and The Shawshank Redemption, is because there are these movies that one of the central things that happen in the movie is this person's wrongfully jailed and they escape. Right? Sorry if I'm spoiling the movies for you guys, but they're two of my favorite movies, and I love the escape process, the amount of energy that goes into escaping, and all of the stuff that happens in the movies. But one of the things that they both do, or that their energy is invested in, like, I'm not going to be in this prison. Like, I am going to completely be liberated from it. And that inner commitment, right, drives them to continue through all the hardship that it takes to actually accomplish that. And then there's other people that succumb to it and say, oh, this just is what it is, and this is how it is. And so there's an element to recovery is that requires you not to settle for mitigating symptoms, for getting better, for coping, for strategies that kind of help you. Real recovery comes from like this inner commitment to, like, I am not allowing this prison to control any aspect of my life or control me in any way. And that's the reality. Fear is a prison. When a fear when fear gets its hold on your life in some way, shape, or form, this could be fear over relationships, it could be fear over disease and health, it could be fear over social situations, about futuristic ideas, about money, about whatever it is. When fear itself grips you, what happens is that you become consumed by it and your life becomes organized around it. So things that trigger you all of a sudden are on your forefront. I can't go there, this might trigger me, right? Or when you're in situations and you're ruminating, you're not really in the situation. That is a great example of how fear is a prison. It prevents you from just enjoying a basic activity like having dinner with your family, because you're in your mind ruminating about something and the fear itself is driving that, right? That's an amazing example of the prison of fear. You could be in a completely different state in that activity as well, but the fear itself creates the prison where that is no longer enjoyable. That's a form of suffering. Fear is suffering in every which way possible. Fear creates destruction, or fear is destructive, I should say. That's a better way of phrasing that. In its nature, when you're driven by fear, you naturally do things that are destructive. Just the very nature of being in a chronic state of fight or flight is destructive to your body. into your nervous system, to your organs, right? It weighs on you, it ages you, it wears you down, it brings your energy level lower. It brings your libido lower. It brings, it doesn't brings your immune system lower, right? I mean, the very nature of just being in this state is destructive on almost every plane that it exists in. And it also creates barriers. It prevents you from living the life that you want. That is like the very definition of the prison, right? Of a prison. It holds you. When you want to excel, when you want to go and do this thing, when you want to go on this vacation, when you want to, ask this person to go on a date, when you want to, again, pursue this career, this opportunity, whatever it is. And fear draws the wall that says, oh, no, you can't do that because this. Fear is the very thing that prevents you from doing that. You think it's the projection, but it's the literal fear itself. That's why there's so much wisdom to that quote, and that's why it's like the central quote of the Taking Back Control program, which is the program I run to help people overcome this and break out of this prison. The idea of the only thing to fear is fear itself, because it's not about what we project the fear onto. It's literal fear that creates the prison, that confines your life, that limits your life, that ultimately destroys it. And I've lived in the confines of this prison before. And I've also lived outside of it. And I can tell you that one of the weirdest things about being in a completely different place in my life, being outside of the grips of fear, living from predominantly states of, again, acceptance, peace, trust, even high states like love, appreciation, gratitude, right? One of the things is that I used to think that while I was in the prison that I was free. That's probably the most perplexing thing to me is I wasn't even really aware how stuck, how imprisoned I was. And I would literally have conversations that would be like, well, I'm choosing this, I'm doing this because I want to. And I would literally argue for my own limitation. My perception is that I wasn't even in prison because I didn't know anything different. It reminds me of, the character Brooks in the Shawshank Redemption. For those of you that have seen the movie, that he's been in prison so long that he gets institutionalized. That like escaping prison is so traumatic to him because it's such a radical adjustment that he can't even cope with freedom itself. Now that doesn't happen in my experience with fear, but like that idea is so radical because it's like you can get so used to prison that you can literally fear freedom. And what this show's about, what this platform's about, what Restored Minds is about is freedom. Is true freedom. Is not settling for freedom on Tuesdays and Fridays and not trying to, cope, strategize, and, whatever. It's actually like, I'm no longer in this prison. And that, I just want so bad to share with you that if you're there today, like that is available. It's like, but it comes with the inner decision, right? Much like I talked about in those movies, that you have to decide for yourself that you're not going to settle for less than that. You can't allow yourself to settle for less than that. You have the decision to settle. And I think that that's one of the things that when you really talk about one of your freedoms here is your freedom to determine the endpoint in which you're aiming for, what you really want for yourself. And you have the ability to stay. You have the ability to settle for less, or you have the ability to decide that I'm not stopping until I have full liberation, till I determine the flow of my life. Because while you secretly may believe that you do, if you're really honest with yourself, you're going to find all the areas that fear really is the thing that controls your life. Maybe not in every facet, but definitely in some. And you're going to realize fear in its nature is destructive. And the only thing to ever really fear in life is fear itself and the ways in which fears imprison us. Because if you focus from that perspective and you make your in-game liberation instead of the mitigation of symptoms, the trajectory for your recovery is night and day. Night and day difference. And so I want to shine a light on that today, and I hope this was helpful. I hope it served you. And with that, wishing you a great day and a great week, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Hey there, thanks so much for watching that episode. If you found it helpful, we have some links to some other episodes that we think you might like as well. And if you're looking for help on your journey to recovery from fear, stress, and anxiety, either check out the links in the notes or head over to restoredminds.com. Thank you, and talk to you soon.